here we go. So 37. This is a really neat chapter on the nervous system, which is it's actually this is 3 chapters in A&P because we do have special senses. It's a separate chapter, but there's 4 chapters in our A&P book on this topic. Okay, so the comments. I'm going to skip a lot of this one here. Like, we're not going to do the evolution of the nervous system very quickly. I don't even cover that much in A&P. I'm not going to worry about that. We'll look at some other organisms, nervous system. I mean, very quickly. We spend most of our time taking a hard look at the animal CNS and the PNS. Okay, and then the nerve tissue. Okay, we're going to run through. It's really pretty cool. A great little introduction here. Y'all weren't even born at that time, right? But in 89, 90, Facts of Life, Michael J. Fox was like the hottest actor. He won like 3 Emmys in a row as a daytime, nighttime, you know, back for cable and all the other. There was no Netflix or anything like that. There's no streaming. But he was a rock star. I mean, he won like 3 or 4 Emmys in a row playing this character, Michael Keaton, the character he played. And then this is about the time he came out with the Back to the Future movies, right? Which y'all probably seen those. They're pretty popular still because they were just iconic when they were made. Okay, brilliant idea. But anyway, but in 91, he was like maybe 30 years old. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Actually, if you really want to see a really good interview, I'm actually addicted to the Today Show on Sunday morning with Willie Nice. I actually have the mug. I got that for Christmas for my kids. The mugs at the end of that show, they help me. I'm going to have to get my dogs and stuff acting right and get on there. But anyway, love that show. Think he does a good job. I think he's a really good guy. But he interviewed Michael J. Fox a couple months ago, and he is still alive. He's the same age I am. He's about probably my age. He's around 55 or so. So he's now 25 years or so, almost 30 years. 30 years diagnosed with this, right? Really, really bad, right? One of the worst things to be diagnosed with. And he acted with it some, but this is a neurological disease that he is actually the chairman of raised over, I think, $150 million for this. Okay, so he is one of the rare people to get this early onset, and he has raised a lot of money with this. There it is, Michael J. Fox Foundation. And the reason Willie Geist was a big friend with him is his dad was diagnosed with this too. His dad was a real famous reporter for CBS Sunday morning show for CBS. And really did all the funny stuff. He would go find the world's largest twine ball and all that kind. He was a real humorous guy, and he is dealing with that. So he's on the board, actually. Willie Geist is on the board of the Michael J. Fox Foundation. But this is a terrible disease where we don't know what's going on, where the brain starts to deteriorate, not naturally. He is, like I said, he's got a few treatments that have come from the money that they've raised, but still no cure for this. Okay, so if we go back to our first things we talk about in A&P about all the body systems, about 18 of them, there have been no new discoveries in bones in 100 years. Okay, we're not going to find any bone, but I would say still 25% of the nervous system is not understood. Okay, so this is probably the great mystery left in biology for me, in human A&P, is the brain. I think I told y'all when I first started teaching or taking A&P, there was no chapter on immunity. Okay, I've got one of my old books that had no chapter on immunity. Okay, it had a little bit, maybe 10 chapters at the end of the cardiovascular system about the lymphatic system and how these other sets of tubes and stuff, but really nothing much about how the immune system works. So now we got 120-page chapter in A&P. So still, as we go through this one, we're going to tell you that right now I cannot explain memory, I cannot explain consciousness, I cannot explain how you can recall some experience that you had 30, in my case, 50 years ago. Not 50 years ago, but I can remember something 45 years ago when I hear a song. Okay, so it's crazy. So we'll give you my best shot on that. But here's what we see in nature. We got to look at some of the earlier ones here. The hydra has a nerve net, so they don't have a brain, don't have a spinal cord, but they have this set of nerves run through their body, and they actually hunt their prey and kill it, and then digest it. Then we go on over to the planaria, a little bit higher up the evolutionary change, and you can see I'm going to cut that hair off. This is quite cool over here. Somebody had it really cool. Okay, warm it up a little bit. But they have a brain or central ganglion sort of brain structure, eye spot, and a sort of a lateral nerve cord that sort of looks like a spinal cord. Then we get over the worms. We have a brain, and we have a spinal cord going down this ventral nerve cord, which would be our spinal cord. Okay. And so as you get a little bit farther up, you can see the insects, and then we got the squid, and of course I love it, the kitty cat here. I almost said something really bad. I should have said that. My mind goes to bad places. China buffet, I'm sorry. I said, okay, whatever. Okay, but anyway, but nervous system, right? Hey, look, I think we in America are really messed up. We are, here's your $5 word for the day. Ethnocentric. It's when you make fun of somebody else's culture because you're too stupid to understand their culture, right? You know what I'm saying? So me thinking I'm special because I'm American, right? Well, I don't know if I'm any more bad than anybody else, but they're people, God put these animals on earth for us to eat, right? And some of them seem to make good pets, right? But my dad had cows he loved, right? But we still eat them, right? And so, you know what they call a man with, 20 cats and amnesia, right? As a farmer, right? That's a rancher, right? Okay. But there are people that eat it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Okay? I think that's the way, that's their culture, right? We shouldn't make fun of that, right? Still, I got a smile on y'all when I mention the child buffet. Yes, ma'am.
What about hamsters? You can't technically eat hamsters, they're so small.
Well, you can just eat them like, well, dove. I mean, I eat dove, but they're like, you got to have a whole, like a 6-pack, right? You got to have 6 doves to make a meal, right? But you could. Only one I'll say this right here. We were doing kidneys the other day. I don't think anybody eats kidneys. There's no meat in kidneys. I don't know what people do. We did good with it. Some people do eat kidneys, but that's a bad idea. It's a toxic waste stuff. It's a filter of yeah, pretty bad. But anyway, to the brain, sorry. Okay, so basically, we'll just look at the evolution of it. I'm going to skip over this. But here's how the brain evolves, that brain stem we saw. And we'll just kind of skip on into that, get on past that. And we'll talk about the 2 big divisions. I think you can have a nice picture here. So here we go. So let's just dive into this. So the 2 divisions of the nervous system are the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, and then the peripheral nervous system, and that's all the nerves coming off the brain and spinal cord. Okay. Now, if you want to get OCD, there are 12 cranial nerves that come off the brain. One of them comes all the way down to all your internal organs. And then, but most of them will move things in the head and face, right? That makes sense, right? Most of the cranial nerves are head, face, and shoulder things, like moving the head and stuff like that. There are 31 pairs of spinal nerves that come off the vertebrae, come out between the vertebrae. So there are 31 spinal nerves that come off from the spinal cord. You can see starting at the neck all the way down to the sacrum, and then some of it actually comes out down there. Now, this is where it gets even more fun. We can break the peripheral nervous system into 2 groups, okay? And basically, kind of roughly here, you have the somatic nerves that detect sensory receptors, right? And they're going to bring things in. And then there are nerves leaving the spinal cord going back out to the body part. Afferent are motor neurons that do make something happen. So you got nerve impulses coming in, and you got those coming out. Okay, so you can see there. So we have somatic, meaning skin, spatial senses, and visceral sensory from all the internal organs are sending information up these nerves up to the spinal cord and brain. And then they make their decision and send out an appropriate response via somatic nerves, which are conscious control, and autonomic nerves, which are not. So all the ones on the left, you have no control over somatic, sensory, or visceral ones. So your guts are sending information to the brain, spinal cord all the time, okay? And then the brain makes a decision, and it can send out 2 of them. It can send out somatic nerves, those that you have conscious control over, like you. My wife beat the dog last night because I beat her yesterday for doing the same thing, and I made her beat her today. Okay, last night. Okay, and the dog's probably going to do it again today. So we actually got a little gate over. I won't let them in the den. I'm just trying to make her go somewhere else, preferably outside, right around the country where we keep her. I keep her in the bathroom. But somatic nerves are conscious movement, and then those that are autonomic. Now think about that. You do not have to move your food around. You don't have to move your food from your small intestine down to the large intestine. All that is automatic. That makes sense, right? So we have nerves that are conscious control, somatic, and those that are autonomic. Okay. Matter of fact, I'll give you a good example of the somatic sensory. It's kind of weird. I have a friend of mine that was taught heating and cooling here. I saw him Sunday. He's getting on up there. He's probably getting close to 70. And back when he was a young man doing heating and cooling, he fell off a roof and tried to grab the awning or whatever, trying to grab something for stuff falling 12 feet to the ground. And he caught his wedding band on the edge of, I guess, what we call the gutter. And it basically cut all that, just went down the bone and cut all the muscle and it flew, like taking wire wire and cutting all that off. So he looked down and saw the bone. This is back in the 70s. So they just took some wire wire and cut his finger off. Right there. And so we played a lot of golf, and he would always buy gloves, and it always looked like he's shooting a bird playing golf. Because this just sticks out because he has no finger in there. So one day we were playing really good. I used to play way too much golf. I actually just pretty much quit because I was doing it too much. And one day he was out there doing this, breathing on his fingers. His finger was cold. He said, and I said, what are you doing, man? He said, my finger's cut. I said, you ain't got no finger there. He goes, I know, that's the point. I can't want it. Because his brain was wanting, like, where you at? So we know now, like, the brain might go, check the leg, check. And the leg is sitting over and pulls back up, said, we're good, we're down here. And that finger hasn't responded in 30 years. Okay, they would put, I know it sounds funny, but they'll even put electronic stimulators in people's body to shock the spinal cord so they won't have what's called phantom pains for their legs hurt from soldiers and stuff that have legs amputated and stuff. Yeah, pretty real. So the brain is expecting a certain input, but that's pretty cool. Okay, now here's where it gets even crazier. So somatic nerves, conscious control, we can do that. Autonomic nerves, God did something really crazy here. He has two divisions here. So he divides it into two sets of nerves. Okay, now we'll go ahead and answer it, and we'll answer it again in the chapter because it's a little more detailed chapter. But there are two groups of autonomic nerves. Now look, I'm going to tell you now, look, don't take this wrong way, God, you the man, or you the one with the thought, okay? But I would have done accelerated brain. Like one sped thing up, one slow things down. But he did something, or God did something totally crazy here. Even all the way back to that cat. They all have this. The sympathetic nerves and parasympathetic nerves go to all the internal organs, but they do something totally different to different organs. Okay, let me go ahead and tell you. The sympathetic nerves, you got my story straight, on the left, they will make all the organs speed up that you need to have work to stay alive for the next 30 seconds. Okay, so if you were to be in a situation like you're in a movie and somebody comes in and starts shooting up the movie, like that, like happened up in Colorado years ago, right? Your nervous system will freak out. Your sympathetic nerves will go from, I'm going to use sound as a metaphor, right, as a nerve firing. What we're talking about is electrical firing here, nerves. I'm having a good day. Having a really good day. Boom, boom, boom. That makes your heart rate go up, rhythm rate go up. Makes your skin, you get tingling, you get all nervous. That fires up your reticular activation center constantly. You are wide awake, dude, you're scared. What do you think that did to breath sitting in the sun? Your stomach digested breath. Cuts it off because we're about to die. We're not worried about breath. What about you looking at that good-looking boy or girl? Ooh, he's looking good. You get excited. No, all that cuts off. Nobody tries to reproduce when you get shot at, okay? All that gets cut off. What about the large intestine? I already told you what it did. What did it do? You have this liquid. It sucks water out of poo-poo. That's all. All of that. Eyes always dilate when you get excited. Sympathetic nerve. Eyes always dilate. Sphincters, open, close, they freak out. So sometimes you put yourself, sometimes you poop on yourself. It's just weird. They kind of weird. They don't know what to do. They just fire. Open and close. Parasympathetic nerves were firing. Cuts off. They take the gun away, guy gets arrested, your sympathetic nerves slow down. And then parasympathetic goes. So Leo, let's go break down. So let's go out of food, okay? Let's do the liver thing, okay? So parasympathetic nerves speed up housekeeping. Sympathetic nerves speed up fight or flight. And y'all have all seen this, right? Fight or flight. My little dog, I tell you, she ain't right. Okay, look, I come home last night, 5:30, I go over there, worked up hours. I came in like 3 yesterday. That's pretty bad, right? That's not just been a waste of time. But I worked like 3 to 5:30. I walked to the house and she came out of the den like I was fixing to kill everybody in the house. Screaming every time. She knows it's me. She had her house. Hey, what's up? But I mean, if you was my next door, you'd come out with a gun. Like somebody trying to kill me. Dog crazy. Everything triggers for fight or flight. I'm telling you, she's got that hair trigger, you know what I'm talking about? Like, boom, when it gun just goes off to look at it, okay? Other people don't, right? So think about that. So sympathetic nerves fire up the organs that are needed to stay alive for the next few minutes, increase breathing rate, heart rate, slows down all digestion, and parasympathetic does the opposite. Okay? Now, what we're going to see in this chapter, let me go ahead and tell you something else kind of cool. That these two, now I think I've already told you that nerves work by sending electrical impulses down these motor neurons, these living extensions of cytoplasmic extensions of a cell. So they send electricity down their cell membrane. when electricity reaches the end of the nerve to the organ it wants to stimulate, like the heart, they release chemicals called neurotransmitters at these little gaps called synapses. Okay? So the gap between the end of an axon or the end of a nerve and an organ you're trying to generate, trying to make it do something, the space here is called a synapse. Now, I would have thought God might have some electricity organ like a spark plug. There ain't no organ, no electricity in your body. Okay? We release the chemicals from the end of the nerve to the organ we want to stimulate, and that chemical is called neurotransmitter. It binds receptors and it causes the act potential to begin on that organ or stop it. Some neurotransmitters are stimulatory, some are inhibitory. Heroin makes you stop firing nerves, so you don't feel no pain. Now, guess what the neurotransmitters for those two are? I'll tell you really cool in here. If you are, I'll give you a kind of go ahead and tell this. So we had our last baby 21 years ago. We went and had an elective C-section. And they give her a little drug to knock her out, and then they're going to go in and do surgery. So they let her in after in one like the birthing rooms for like 30 minutes at Oxford. And I'm in there alone with my wife, who's doing some really good drugs. She's like, oh man, I'm feeling good. And I'm kind of getting bored. And they got their crash cart over there in that room. So in the name of A&B, what I had to do. What do you think I did? I went over some drawers and looked around, right? Top drawer, opened it up, and it had two little boxes of syringes, little milliliter syringes. One box was epinephrine adrenaline, which is a sympathetic neurotransmitter, and the other one was acetylcholine, which is the parasympathetic neurotransmitter. That had a very cool A&P moment there. So if a baby's born having a heart attack, what are we going to give it? Acetylcholine, that makes the heart rate go down. That's parasympathetic. But if it ain't breathing, they shoot acetylcholine, they shoot norepinephrine adrenaline in, and that will make the heart rate go up. So they can just do a couple of chest compressions, and that drug will get taken right to the heart. Pretty cool example, right? So those are two that guys stick out. Now we got those a bunch of short questions. We just answered. We'll come back and look over those again. Okay. So here it is, load up a little bit clearer now that I got through that. Okay. So what are neurons? Okay, neurons are the functional units of the nervous system, right? And neuroglials are support cells. Okay. We're going to come back to that. So we have found out that a whole bunch of support cells that play a big role today. Okay. And let's get the picture up here. Oh my goodness, I like a picture. Here's a neuron. So a neuron, this is the multineuron, and that's the most common one. And you can see it has many dendrites and one long axon. That's for electricity. So dendrites generally receive electrical impulses, neurotransmitters, and then electricity fires across this all the way down to the end of the axon to that axon terminal with a synapse. Okay. This is a bipolar one here that has two knobs coming off, an axon and a dendrite. Okay. So basically, motor neurons are going to transfer electrical impulses through our body. And so one of the hardest things to try to get across to everybody is the nervous system works like the old Morse code works. By sending electrical impulses down a copper wire, we can do Morse code. We send electrical impulses down living fiber optic cables, copper cables called neurons. Okay, but these are living cables, living extensions. Okay, so we have sensory neurons. Okay, then we have these interneurons, which are multipolar interneurons inside the brain and spinal cord, and then we have the so we have interneurons, sensory neurons, interneurons, and then of course the motor neuron is sending electric impulse out. So there are three types of neurons. There are sensory neurons sending information to the brain and spinal cord. There are interneurons inside the brain and spinal cord that are going to be your programming to determine what to do. And then the effector organ coming out will be these motor neurons, efferents coming out. So efferent means coming out back to the body to do something. Sensory, afferent, bring it in. And then these interneurons are in our brain that allow us to make our thinking, our memory, and our language. And I like to think of it like our programming, right? And you can alter your programming. Now, how many of y'all have ever like stubbed a toe or dropped something on your hand, worked on work, maybe dropped your glass, and said your favorite four-letter word? Now, right now, y'all are approaching your worst language of your entire life right now. Usually 16 to 24. And usually you have a child at 24 or in your 20s, and they're like little tape recorders, and that cleans your language up real quick. When they hear your favorite four-letter word, and then they say it at Sunday school on Sunday, that kind of cleans that up real quick. All right, mother names or the in-laws, okay? But did you know that you don't have to say those words? You can actually program yourself not to do that, right? This is tag. And they say in psychology, like you do the same thing for like 30 days and it becomes part, like you go to the gym every day, 30 days, and there's a really good chance you're gonna keep going to the gym. Okay, just habit. And so I had a preacher around one time, we were working outside or something, and he hit his thumb with a hammer to full swing. And everybody there stopped and looked immediately, because they knew who hit their thumb, right? And this is the preacher, so he's always on being watched, right? And I would have said the four-letter word, probably beginning with the letter S, my favorite word. And he went, "Thank you, Lord, for this pain. For I know that I will be in a better place when I'm going to be in heaven." And I went over and said, "I want some of that Kool-Aid. Where you got it?" Amen. And so I was playing golf one time, so I hit 3 out of bounds one time, and then one of our elders threw his club down the road, on concrete. I've never seen him throw a club. He is in control of himself, right? I quit throwing my clubs after I threw a 7-iron down the ground and came up and busted my shin. It bounced off hard clay and then it cut a hole in my leg. And I said, "Okay, I gotta quit this. I'm getting worked up about golf." Okay, but our inner neurons, how they're wired, determines our response to things, and that's including our memory and our thinking and our learning, and all higher functions of the brain are these motor neurons interconnected. They say that the number of neurons in the brain represents the number of trees in the rainforest, say the tropical rainforest in South America, and the number of connections, synapses, is equal to the number of leaves in those trees in South America, and everybody's brain. And your memories are how you wire these neurons together, the synapses is formed. That's how long-term memory is achieved. We do know that much. Is that not crazy? But we haven't been able to do like a brain transplant or anything like that yet. Okay? Now, I would say this too, just a little fun note, but let's go over that one more time. So we had sensory input, they kind of did them out of order, right? Sensory input, inner neurons making decisions in the brain spinal cord, and then motor neurons coming out. Guess what the computer is doing? The computer involved made a man in the 40s and 50s is a man's attempt to mimic the animal nervous system. Think about this. Look what I'm doing. I got sensory input, keyboard, and my little slip drive and my picture, my PowerPoint. The inner neurons in that computer turn it into a PowerPoint, and that's output, right? The e-parent is the monitor. Your phone has sensory, motor, and integrated functions. So all computers mimic the animal nervous system with sensory, motor function, and those inner neurons is your Apple Safari, whatever program, DOS, Microsoft, Windows you're operating on, right? Whatever it is now, whatever it's called now, whatever the latest thing is. That kind of cool? And they say about maybe 15 years ago, we had computers now, not one on your phone, but they have a computer, like a big old building, 20-story building with all these computers in it, and it is quicker and has a better calculating function than the human brain. So now they have exceeded our potential for calculations and things. I never played chess, never got into that. I was more of a checkers kind of person, a little bit easier for my brain skill. Okay, but they say now that they have every world championship chess match ever played in their data bank. So when you make the first move in chess, it can actually play every move ever been played in every world championship chess match against you. And they say the smartest people who play chess can think maybe 10 or 15 moves, something like that. This is playing the whole game out, every game's ever been played. And so the world, what they call the world champion now is at a standstill. So it's a draw, or it loses sometimes, but the computer probably a little better than it maybe now. I think the computer beats it more than the world champions. Okay. It's kind of scary, isn't it, right? Now our next assignment was to go watch Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator 1 and 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I don't got nothing wrong. I am going to see the latest one. I didn't see number 7, whatever the latest one. Because Arnold makes an appearance in the latest one, right? But it makes you wonder. I think it's good I don't have a human in that line with a nuclear weapon, right? I'm just saying, give me a good, first lieutenant in a silo somewhere before we end the world, right? So that's computers making decisions. But they do a lot of things. I mean, come on. I mean, anybody see the auto-driving car? You ready for that? Google's fixing to have it all automated, right? I don't feel good about getting in the car and getting in the back seat and going to sleep and drive that line. I think I'd rather the first couple times be, maybe watching a movie while being not by the wheel. I can take over if I need to. Right? I'm just saying. So how many of y'all are going to be truck drivers, right? Change that profession. That could be ended real quick, right? Okay, anyway, just scary times, right? So computers kind of mimic that. All right, so what about the, here's a $1 million question. So let's talk about this nerve impulse. This is the tough one. So this is one that could be like a 40-minute lecture itself. So I'm going to kind of do a 5-10 minute quick draw on this one. Okay, this is pretty scary. But if you take me for A and B, I usually have a 10-point, 15-point question on the chapter. We have a chapter test on this, right? Describe an action potential. Okay, so what I'm going to try to do is show you this electrical event that occurs on this cell body. So we got to have an electrical event that's going to cause a wave of electricity to travel from the dendrite all the way across to the end of the axon, so we can tell another cell to release a neurotransmitter to tell it to fire. And some neurotransmitters say don't fire, so they can be stimulatory or inhibitory. Okay, well, long story short, or short story long, every cell membrane, every cell in your body has what's called a resting membrane potential. And what that means is that there is a, and this was actually discovered looking at the axon on a squid. So the squids have a very big axon, almost as big as a pencil. You can see it. And so I say I have to update my lectures, because I would say at this point, go to a Radio Shack and get a voltometer. Well, y'all don't even know what a Radio Shack is. Okay, so you would go to Home Depot or Napa. Napa's still working, right? Napa probably better than Home Depot, and tell me you want a voltometer. And you can buy a little box here that has a red and black cord, got jumper cables on it, and you can put it on a battery and tell it the battery's still working, right? Or you can check your wiring in your house. You can check your 110 to see if it's 110 volts. Well, they took this voltometer, and a very small one, and put one on the outside of a cell membrane of an axon on the squid, and another one inside of it, so you get a voltage difference. And so voltage is a difference in charge between the inside and outside. And when we do, you get minus 70 millivolts. Now, this is not enough to wake you up. If I shock you with 70 millivolts, you wouldn't even feel it. But this is the resting membrane potential of all cell membranes in your body. Okay? And what we're going to do is show you how this is altered to cause a wave to move down that electrical event. So we're looking at an electrical event. We want to see this to go positive and then cause a wave all the way down this axon to another end. Okay, now if you don't know what I'm talking about, if you want to see something really fun, then don't do this. This is kind of joke. But take a good fork and stick it in that 110. You ever done that? You ever got a 110? I have done that myself, accidentally. But I picked up an extension cord one time that was torn, and I grabbed the copper wire by standing in water. Bad experience. And that electricity runs through your body, and it makes all your potential fire. So you start, I get the heebie-jeebies, and you talk like, okay, because it's pulsating on you. Luckily, my dad was in the barn and saw that, and because I was picking up this, I was going to do the old pull the extension cord out, like we do sometimes with electronics. And and 110 would just cause you to freeze. And so my dad came and like tackled me and rolled me, and all the electrical wire ripped out of the wall. Okay, and unplugged it, of course, and toward the wall wiring. But if you stay on a 110 for about 10 minutes, it'll start to stop the heart. The SA nodes and the AV nodes will stop the heart with you. Maybe less than that. 6, 7, 8 minutes can be quite dangerous. Now, what is causing this electrical difference? Well, what we now know is that there are more negatively charged ions on the inside, and there is a leakage of ions in that causes the inside just to have more negative charge than the outside. And that's good, because if you check a voltometer on a 9-volt battery, guess what? Batteries work by voltage difference between the positive and negative terminal, right? So you're sending electrons through your electrical phone or whatever to where you burn the batteries out. Now, also, there are these channels here. You can see them right here. There are sodium potassium channels that open up here when stimulated. And make a long story short, there is also an ATPase as a pump here that pumps sodium on the outside of the cell and potassium on the inside of the cell. And I see that this Dickens or somebody, one of my collectors, there was 2 pins up here with this thing, and now they toted them off here. Or Mr. Haddon told them off. Let's see, I'll try with my finger. My finger does not make a good pin here. Okay, so basically, here's what we got. On the outside of the cell, out here, sodium is high, and that's a positive ion. And on the inside, we have high potassium. So this always threw me off, because notice you can see potassium is high on the outside, sodium is high on the inside. So it's actually set up here. Now, these receptors, some of these are triggered, and I'm going to do the ones that I understand better. Some are triggered by electricity, others are triggered by pressure. And the best one I can think of are pressure receptors. So have you ever seen somebody asleep and a fly land on their face, and then they don't feel it? But see, a fly doesn't stimulate enough pressure to fire an action potential. And then it crawls in their mouth sometimes, it crawls out, right? The first thing I've seen that, okay? I don't know, like, what they're sleeping, right? If you slap me on my face like I slapped my dog yesterday, you're gonna recognize it, right? Because it triggers a pressure receptor that causes the sodium channels to open up. And sodium opens up. So sodium now, let me get my color right here. Sodium now, this channel opens, and we're going to get a rushing in of sodium. And that is what happens when you get stimulated. And we see the negative 70 go to up to plus 35. And when you get to plus 35, all the sodium channels all the way down pop open. So you get a wave of electrical event all the way down the axon. So sodium channels all pop open in order, right down like a wave. Like, think of it like me holding a rope with my butt in the back and just popping it, that wave going all the way back. That sodium channel popping open. So everybody went positive real quick. But as soon as that happens, potassium channels pop open, and they're going to go back out, and immediately what? Take it back to minus 70. But now you have what? High potassium on the outside and high sodium on the inside. So there's a pump called sodium potassium pump that always puts the sodium back out and potassium back in to set that up all the time, 24/7. Matter of fact, some people spend 25% of their energy just running that sodium potassium pump in their cells. But that wave of electrical event, that wave is, that movement is the action potential. What do you think? So one more time. So sodium rushes in, it goes positive ions, sodium in, and then potassium ions leave, and it takes it back to minus 70. So you got a positive ion coming in and another positive ion leaving at the same time. And that is an action potential. Here's what it looks like on a voltometer. You get a sodium moving in, you get a depolarization up to plus 40, then it actually hyperpolarizes it back down. So there's usually a little period before it can fire again. Back below the rest of the membrane potential, and then it brings it back up. That's called hyperpolarization. It goes below that. So depolarizing is going positive, repolarizing is going positive. And that sends information to another body part. And so if that's true, then how does the face know, the brain know the difference between me kissing my dog on his cheek or slapping my dog on his cheek? And here's how. Go back to our sound metaphor. That sound represents our potential. Here is your boyfriend kissing you. Like that. Here's your boyfriend slapping you around. Now, for some people, they like that. I ain't getting into that. That's a whole other movie, that movie, whatever, 30 Shades or whatever. But most people don't like getting slapped really hard, right? So at some point, it's going to go from pleasure to what? Oh, heck no, you ain't doing that to me, right? So it's a pain, you pull out a gun or whatever, right? Or, something, whatever. Because nerves don't know. So here's my point. I'm trying to be humorous, be real. Action potentials are all or none. There's no partial action potential. So the brain only determines stimulation by, or intensity by, number of action potentials, right? Dog licking my toes. Me, Nathan backing over my toes on the truck. And so you go, oh, that hurts. Okay, so that at some point it becomes pain. Me getting some drugs to slow down the fire, or my morphine kicking in. What do you think? So number of action potential is how we determine intensity. Pretty cool, right? All right, y'all probably got 3 people sleeping on here. I'm not that boring. So I know it's Tuesday, which is really Monday. It's kind of weird here, okay? So action potentials then work their way down. Now here's something else to make it even crazier. Some nerves, did anybody notice these pig in the blankets? Okay, y'all see the pig in the blanket? Come on. My mama used to cook some mean pig in the blanket, right? Get your little hot dog with a biscuit around it, right? A little wiener hanging out the end of the biscuit. Come on, people. Like me. Come on, y'all can do this. Here's 3 pig in the blankets in a row, right? Okay, these are nerves that are said to be myelinated. And the cell is called a Schwann cell. And they myelinate these nerves. And here's the long story short. Myelinated nerves are going to look white when we dissect them out. Are you cleaning the deer? But also they fire quicker, so the action potential doesn't have to travel along the cell membrane here. It actually shoots down through the cytoplasm, and this is like on speed. So nerves that are myelinated fire 100 to 500 times faster than unmyelinated nerves. And I won't bore you with it, but in the AMP book, it's like the slow ones are like 5 meters per second. Well, look, man, you're like what? From here to here is like a half a meter, right? So there you go, half a second. Or 400 miles an hour. That much quicker, okay? So nerves that we need like vision, moving the eyes and head real fast. moving the lower back are kind of slow nerves, okay? So myelinated nerves fire quicker, okay? And then the gap here is called a synapsis, right? And here are the neurotransmitters that are released. This is, come on, man, we could use just a couple of pictures, okay? So here is the synapsis, the end of an axon, and there's that gap. The synapsis is the gap, and the neurotransmitter is released, and it goes across and binds the receptor to stimulate an action potential to occur, and this do, in this case, another nerve, or it stops it. Because some neurotransmitters are stimulatory, acetylcholine is usually excitatory. It is a neurotransmitter of skeletal muscle, of autonomic, but it's also very involved in the peripheral nervous system and the CNS. Norepinephrine, that's adrenaline, also important in dreaming, waking for mood. This is one that triggered, this is the neurotransmitter of the sympathetic nervous system we mentioned a while ago. Dopamine. Dopamine is also one that's got somewhat sedative, right? It's a little bit lower, involved in emotions, learning, and attention. And serotonin is the one that you make that makes you go sleep at night. Thermoregulation, sleeping, and emotion, and perception. So this was made by the pineal gland. Also, this is the hormone that puts you to sleep. That's serotonin. Matter of fact, and I want to throw this at y'all. Now, please don't think this the wrong way. I do think we need to have a new attitude about mental disorder in our country, right? One of you athletes, or anybody here break their leg, and you go to church on a cast yesterday, on Easter Sunday, or 2 days ago, you're gonna get fried chicken. You're gonna get a visit by every church, every preacher at that church gonna come check on you, right? How's that leg going, right? But don't you check yourself in up here lakeside for mental breakdown, man. Ain't nobody gonna come see you. We have a stigma with mental disorder, which we need to work through, because that, in some cases, is way better than something wrong. We really have that in cancer, right? A bad type of cancer, because we can't treat cancer, lung cancer. We can treat some of our mental disorders because it's a neurotransmitter, not enough being made or ready to release. And the most successful drugs for depression right now are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So they stop the reuptake of serotonin, or it's broken down, so it keeps serotonin levels high. Very, very interesting. So serotonin is one, that is the main target now for almost all our depression drugs and stuff. Now here's my downside. They're saying now that like 60% of America has taken some pill for depression at some point in their life. Do we really think half America's got a mental problem? I don't think so. So I think there's an overprescription of this. Come on, the whole, the prescription painkillers, right? The opioid crisis we've had in America, right? All that is overprescription. But all that given though, a lot of people need help and are not getting help, right? And you can go, now here's the problem. Everybody's chemically different. I always use this bad example. I hope y'all remember this. This is real important. How many of y'all remember the first time you went to a party and people drank beer or whiskey? Y'all been around people drinking? Now, but some of y'all may not. That seems great if you had. Okay, but have you noticed how everybody acts different with beer? There's that one guy that sits in the corner and just watches everybody. There's always that 100-pound little wire guy and wants to put everybody's butt. That was my first cousin. Can I tell you, I was a designated driver in college. And we would go to a bar and he'd pick some offensive lineman that over there, tell them how ugly they are, and get beat to death. He would weigh 120 pounds, something like that. There was a country song a couple of years ago about tequila. Maybe some truth to that. People's inhibitions go way down when they drink, right? I think the name of the song was Tequila Makes the Clothes Come Off. FYI. Okay, this is a big hit. Okay, minor hit. Okay, anyway. But anyway, so be careful with alcohol. Everybody responds different to alcohol. That's what I'm getting at. Well, same thing with drugs for depression and stuff. Everybody chemically is a little different. You just got to find the one that works for you. And I have friends of mine that have been on taking some of these drugs for 20, 30 years and saved their life, saved their marriage. I mean, because you can't live with something of some of them. I would think with some of this, right? If someone really truly had, like, be very difficult without some medication, right? Like that's some of the bad ones here. We'll look at a couple of them I think listed in a minute. But anyway, all that's got to do with neurotransmitters, okay? So neurotransmitters are super important. They got to be released, and then they got to be taken back up. So acetylcholinesterase breaks down acetylcholine. And so the popular drug for depression prevents serotonin from being retaken back up. So therefore, I keep those levels high. Okay, drug abuse. Persons take a drug at a dose level that increases potential for harm or effect. Addiction is when more of the drug is needed to get the same effect. And then you have withdrawal. And these include, tobacco is a really big one here. They say cigarettes is one of the hardest ones to quit. Does anybody here know anybody that quit smoking cigarettes? I mean, that's pretty strong. Now, a friend of mine who smoked for 30 years, he got up one morning, I think I told y'all, he put them out and never smoked another one. Okay? But I also have a good friend of mine, it's one of our leaders in our recovery thing we have at my church. And actually, he's not a leader now because he had to go back to jail for a little while because he had a relapse. But he was a very successful business person in our area, and he twisted his back in his job work, and he got some of those opiates, and the first one he took, he knew he had to have a whole bottle of that day. So the first time he took one, he knew he was over. So he's literally in a battle with these opiates, the ones that to do that. Now here's what they say. I would also encourage y'all to stay away from, I think they say they may list a few drugs here. Here is the brain, normal brain, before chronic cocaine use, and this is after someone's brain has used cocaine for 6 to 7 months. So the brain, so color like red and stuff and yellow is activity. So it actually kills the brain. It destroys some of the brain. The other one here I would mention here too, just going on, what's a pretty good little stopping point here if it's going to get specific in the brain, but crystal meth. Crystal meth, which is very popular in North Mississippi because they can make it with ephedrine, with the pills you can take for a Sudafed. It's cooked. It's kind of funny because there's 2 ways to make it. There's the Japanese way, and the Japanese made it, and that's what the kamikaze pilots were smoking before they flew their planes into our ships. So it made them that crazy. And then there's a German way to make it, and guess who the Germans give it to? The Jews in the concentration camp. So ever wonder why they didn't do much of anything around, why they didn't fight back, or why they could work 12 or 18 hours a day? They were giving them crystal meth, basically. Okay, because it makes you crazy. Okay, and they say that this is our chief of police here for our campus, my former shooter, he also was the crystal meth Panola County officer, and they were told that they say think of the most wonderful thing you've ever felt in your life. The multiply that times 100, and that's crystal meth. That's smoking crystal meth. I think I'm scared of that. That's doesn't scare me, right? And then every time you take more of it, it never reaches that same high. So you keep taking more and more and more, and you never can reach that same high again. So I would strongly encourage y'all not to try that. And they say it's about as addictive as cigarette to get rid of. Okay. I actually had a friend of mine that we were grilling. This is several years ago. We were grilling for Little League ball. And this is a friend of mine. He wasn't like close friend, but I knew him well enough where we ended up doing some business stuff together. And we were grilling, and one of the guys there was a police officer. Got a phone call and said, "Hey, does anybody know anybody that's had a problem with drugs?" And we did was speak to the first offenders up in DeSoto County. So they have like Scared Straight, where they bring in first time you get caught with marijuana or something, they help somebody that's been to jail, kind of time trying to scare you. That's actually pretty successful, right? And the guy, I didn't even know this. He started tearing up. He said, "Yeah, I'll tell him." And he knew who it was. He said, "Tell him I'll be there at what time." And so he made this appointment through the other guy's phone, and he goes, "Guys," he said, I'm 40 years old. He said, when crystal meth first came out, I started cooking it and selling it. I lost my wife, my family, my business, my dad's business. I almost broke up my whole family. My dad had a very successful business, but he had enough money and sent me to some camp out in Colorado for like 1 month, like death, boot camp, drug addiction camp. And I was able to get off crystal meth. And guess what they did? They introduced me to cigarettes. He was smoking a cigarette at the time. He rolled his arm up. He had 4 patches on his arm in church. So they swapped one addiction for another one, but you can smoke and be functional, right? And not lose. And he did reconcile with his children. Him and his ex-wife never did, but he's still a big part of the children's life. And he's a teacher today doing really well. But he got his life back together. And that's pretty wild. So please be careful out there. I always say, be careful. And just you never know if you're going to be that guy in the corner being fired with one of those football players, right? And then some people take cocaine for the first time. What do they do? It kills them and have a heart attack and die. Check out Lenny Vice. If you want to go to this story about that, he was the second pick in the draft of off himself and went out partying the night after the draft and did cocaine for the first time and died that night. So bad stuff. Be careful out there. Be safe. Love y'all. Well, I'll finish this for the class tomorrow. There'll be a part 1, part 2, et cetera, et cetera. All right, let's stop this thing. Here we go. Y'all have a good one.